Hi guys, happy Sunday. What a go on? So I had a very interesting experience happen to me this week in the operating room, and I wanted to share it with you guys, and then I'm going to be giving my very unsolicited take. Cool? So this week at work, I was in charge, and a part of being in charge means you have to coordinate how the patients come into the operating room for surgery. So one of the days I was sending for a patient from the ICU. So I called upstairs, spoke to the nurse, told her all of the details that she needed to know, and I let her know that I'll be sending support staff up to help them take the patient to the OR. So I sent what we call porters in Jamaica. They're called operating room attendants here. So I send the ORAs up to get the patient, and they come back to me and they're dying laughing because they said to me, Shanna, we went upstairs for the patient and the nurse said, oh my gosh, I did not know y'all have an Irish nurse working in the OR. She has the most amazing accent. And they were dying laughing. So they were like, which Irish nurse? And they were like, the nurse that called me to talk about getting the patient down. She's Irish, right? All jokes. Zine. So after we finally recovered from our laughter, I had to let them know that it's okay that she thought I was Irish, because what a lot of people don't know is that when I speak with my Jamaican accent, the intonation of it can very well sound Irish or Scottish or even German. Because in corresponding with my colleagues, as I told you guys before, I do not code switch for them. If y'all want to spend the time and learn Spanish and French, I am going to exercise my right to use the language I was raised with, and I hope we can understand each other. And I've been doing very good at it so far. I don't push hardcore patois on them, but you know I'm Jamaican when you hear me talk, right? Okay. So I had to explain to them that yes, the intonation of patois has a little Irish lilt, a little Scottish-esque, and it has a little West African mixed into the bunch and all that jazz. So they understood that yes, I might sound Irish to her because the intonation of patois can very well sound Irish. Now, it got me to thinking, and here's where my unsolicited take comes in, right? Who taught us to believe that patois was bad talking? And if we don't speak the Queen's English, then we chat bad, or we have no brought up see, or we not come from nowhere. It is a very unfair statement, and here's why I think that, right? Now, backstory. 180 million years ago, the Earth was what we call a Pangea, which means all of the continents were all stuck on each other, making a super continent, just one. Everybody was one, right? And after the ice age happened, a lot of continents started to shift or drift apart due to earthquakes and the movement of the tectonic plates below the Earth's surface, right? So at one point, all these countries were one big landmass, right? Now I say that to say this. Jamaica is an amalgamation or a coming together of so many different cultures to make this one landmass. Our patois has influences from West Africa, from the British, from the Spanish, from the French, even from the Arawak. So in saying that about us being a supercontinent at one point and then we spread apart, I would like to make the analogy that Jamaica is like a super country made up of different cultures and people. Our patois shows influences from all different settlers who were here at one time. The Irish-Scottish intonation of our accent comes from the Irish-Scottish settlers who were working on the plantations as servants during the period of indentureship, right? I am sure they must have had some form of a communication with the slaves, and the slaves, enslaved I mean, and the enslaved in a bid to adapt would adapt certain ways how they speak. You get what I'm saying? Right. You have the Spanish influences because at one time Jamaica was conquered by the Spanish. So we have words like uno, and we have words like hombre, and we have even words that we say twice like poco poco. That has Spanish influences. We have words from the French, like accoutrement, that we cut down to mean couchement, which literally translate to the same thing. We also have words from our indigenous people, the Arawak people who lived on the island before all of the shipping and enslavement started. Words like hammock, words like canoe, words like even Jamaica that we use. Those are from our indigenous people. And then we go on to think about all of the West African influenced words that we have. Aki, Niam, Mumu, Kaskas, even Kaskas coming over to be what we call Pasa Pasa. All of these words show the influence, the confluence, the congregation of all of the cultures that came here at some point, and we adapted them. We must also understand that the enslaved people, in a bid to adapt to their new environment that they would have had to live in for the rest of their lives, meant that they had to learn to communicate with their enslavers. So yes, the British came and said, what's going on? But to the enslaved ear, translating from their main language where they're coming from, that might just well have sounded like what a go on. And so what's going on became what a go on. And so I appreciate that we were able to adjust and adapt during those times. So we have made our own language. So I want to say this. A lot of people might think that if you don't speak the Queen's English, if you do not speak the multiple traditional languages of the world, such as French and Spanish and Dutch as your second language, it means that your core base Creole or Patois is inferior. But I say this, and hear me out. I believe that our Creole and our Patois is superior to all the traditional languages of the world. And I believe for us to have learned that, for us to have created these languages for ourselves, make us superior. And also that means that just like how the world was a supercontinent at one time, our Patois is a super language. And I say all of this to say that don't ever look down on the vernacular that you speak. Don't ever code switch in a case where people are thinking that you need to. Express yourself in your native tongue. Hold on to what makes yourself true to yourself. People will learn. People will adjust. Just like everybody had to do. Because now I enter my OR and I tell everybody what I want, and they automatically know that, oh, I'm fine. I'm having a good day. Nothing much is up. They will learn. Don't ever downgrade where you're from to suit other people. It never works. And as a Jamaican, all of the Jamaicans out here know we have worked so hard to make our country be on the map so big that it would be relatively futile. Our ancestors were living their happy lives in West Africa. They were taken over to the Caribbean, or West Indies as they're known as. Many of them had to die during the passage. Many of them died when they got here. Many of them died days, years, months, however long later. But you are a direct lineage of your ancestors that fought to survive and lived. And how did they live? They adapted. And a part of that adaptation was to embrace the cultures and the languages that they came into contact with. Therefore, Patois is not a bastard or bad language. Patois is far superior to any of the traditional languages that we were taught. So let me say this to you guys. What a one. Wanna good? Big up on yourself. Now feel free to leave in the comments down below words that are taken from other languages that we use to make our own Patois. And remember, no code switch for nobody. Make them learn it.